Welcome to the 434 defense. My name is Deuce Prince. I'm a Charlottesville, Virginia native, lifelong UVA football fan, and former college offensive lineman. And ladies and gentlemen and wahoos, the transfer portal for the University of Virginia has officially gotten active. Things have gotten very, very interesting over the past, let's say, 72 hours. And it appears that there is more to come. So with the hopes of this video not being horrendously outdated at time of upload, we are going to try and hit this thing hard, hit this thing fast, and get you the information and recap where we have additions in the transfer portal in going into 2026. So without any further ado, let's roll the intro. All right, we are going to start where people typically start their thoughts on football teams, the quarterback position. Our second edition in the transfer portal tonight, Eli Holstein out of Pittsburgh. Previously, he was at Alabama. He had seen action throughout 2 seasons at Pitt. He was fairly productive in 2024. In 2025, he was benched and had a backup role for the back half of the year in Pittsburgh and is coming to the University of Virginia with the expectation of being a backup. This is no shot on Eli. The new quarterback that they have at Pittsburgh is playing very, very well. He's doing a solid job. It seems like they're going to have a very competitive team at Pitt with this quarterback. And so Eli is coming over, with the expectation that he has 2 years of eligibility left. That's important. He's going to have a chance to study at the University of Virginia. He's going to have a chance to sit and learn and kind of readjust himself. And, maybe he could see this as kind of a Dante Moore situation in moderation. Dante Moore going from UCLA where he started to Oregon to kind of sit and develop under Dylan Gabriel. And now he's had an amazing season. Will that happen for Eli? I don't know. Who really knows? But you're starting to see this sometimes in the transfer portal where guys are going to schools with defined quarterback positions to kind of reset themselves. The earlier addition, which kind of set the table for all of this, was the addition of Missouri's Beau Pribula. Beau Pribula, previously of Penn State and then Missouri, before coming over to Charlottesville. We saw our first extended sample size of Beau in 2025 with Missouri. I would say the first 2/3 of the season were a good look at what Beau Pribula is as a quarterback. He got hurt down the stretch, so the last 4 games of the season I really don't think are a good representation of the type of quarterback he is. His throwing ability was seemingly hampered by that injury, and so he played and gutted it out at Missouri in the back half of the year, but he was really used mainly as a running quarterback, and obviously we didn't get a chance to see him live in Jacksonville. He had already opted out to enter the transfer portal by the time of the Gator Bowl, but you look at that first 8-game stretch where they won a lot of good games against a lot of good SEC teams, and even their losses weren't terrible. They took Alabama to the wire. They held Vanderbilt on the back end, even when Beau was hurt. They held him pretty good there. Oklahoma, who went on to the playoff when Beau was definitely hurt, they held that game competitive too. So I think the things that you're going to see with Beau are some of the running traits that he had. He was used as mainly kind of a goal line, short yardage running quarterback with Penn State. Drew Aller was taking most of the snaps at quarterback in the normal kind of down and distance situations. And so Beau came in kind of as a spot player, did a lot of rushing the football, and then he got a chance to captain the ship at Missouri. And I tell you what, I'm watching film of what I thought was his best game against Kansas in week 2 of the 2025 season, and there are a lot of things to like. This is a small thing, but I think it tells you what you need to know about Beau Pribula. There were multiple instances on one drive where the defense jumped off sides. Now, when the defense jumps off sides, if your center snaps it, while the defender's offsides, or the offensive line is induced to move because of the offsides jump and the ball is snapped, that's a free play for the offense. We're told as centers and also with quarterbacks, if that happens, snap the ball. Snap the ball, and there is a designated code word. Some teams might call it red, 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 or fire. Maybe not fire, because that's like a bad field goal snapper, like Viking, or something that's one syllable or two syllables that you can yell out to the receivers and just say, you know what, run go routes. We're going to throw this thing deep. We're going to try and score 6. And ultimately, if it's an interception and they run it all the way back for a pick 6, even if it's the most disastrous result possible, we can just take the 5 yards. We can enforce the offsides or encroachment penalty, take those couple yards and live to fight another day. And shoot, if we throw a 90-yard bomb and score a touchdown, we can just take the 7, decline the penalty. All of a sudden, we've had a game-changing touchdown score. Missouri had multiple of those situations come up. And the one thing I really appreciated was that Bo and his offensive line were on the same page as well as the receivers. The center knew that he could snap the ball and Bo was going to be ready for it. Bo knew exactly what to do, was in communication with his receivers, and they got multiple first downs as a result on one drive. And this was a drive where they were down 2 scores to Kansas early in the game. It seemed like Kansas was going to get out in front of this thing and kind of run away from Missouri, and that drive did a lot to help Missouri work their way back into the game, which eventually became an awesome win for Missouri. I'm still breaking down film of that game. There is a lot to like from both the running and passing from Bo. The other thing is, this dude's just tough. This dude is seriously legit tough. I think with the offensive line that we have returning, the amount of grit, hard work that they have, like, that is going to be a really, really nice mix and match together. He does bring a little bit more mobility than Chandler Morris. Now, I think Chandler was a little bit more comfortable in our system because there was a lot of crossover between Tony Elliott and Chad Morris. Like, those people are just kind of speaking the same football language, but I don't think the jump for Bo is going to be as difficult as it seemed. Missouri ran a lot of the same sets as the University of Virginia, especially out of the pistol, which Virginia used to great success with Chandler Morris. The other part is they played similar football. Missouri had a pretty decent offensive line, and they had a great running back in Ahmad Hardy, as well as a couple really good second and third backs they could use as a change of rotation, very similar to Jamari Taylor. Bo knows what type of football that the University of Virginia played in 2025 and is trying to play in 2026, and I think he's very complimentary for that type of football. Control the clock, control the time of possession, make big plays in the passing game, but also don't be afraid to, throw the ball away or just take a small gain instead of making a big mistake that you then have to start throwing the ball a bunch to work your way out of. I think that was one thing that Virginia did really well in 2025 is they did not let one mistake compound into another, and I think you saw that with Bo Pribula at Missouri. Quarterback kind of dominates a lot of things, and so we just kind of had to dedicate that amount of time. I really like the addition of Bo. I think he's going to do a very, very good job in Charlottesville. I'm very excited for him. We flip over to the defensive side of the ball. On the interior defensive line, Zion Wilson from East Carolina University. Zion has been one of the more productive defensive tackle players in the group of 5, and I think you're going to see him pair extremely well with some of the returning interior D-line guys we have returning, like Jason Hammond, like all the other guys we have in that interior unit. I think he's going to be extremely productive there, and I think it's a chance for him to come onto a bigger stage in the ACC and compete at a high level. We brought in 4 edge rushers, y'all. Mitchell Melton and Daniel Rickert were our 2 main edge rushers last year. Both of those guys are departing. Mitchell Melton and Rickert both attempting for the NFL. And I think we found some useful additions that can mimic kind of their thunder and lightning approach. Daniel Rickert, my favorite effort play of the entire 2025 season was Daniel Rickert's bull rush against Louisville that sent Miller Moss scrambling from the pocket, almost caused a safety. And then, Mitchell Melton had great bend, great acceleration, great movement. He was able to get to the quarterback quickly. We've got Jamon Mathis coming from Kent State. If Trell Harris tells us anything, when Virginia gets a Kent State Golden Flash, things are going to work out well. Ezekiel Larry coming from Yale. Yale being in the Ivy League does not generate the same viewership as even some G5 programs, but I think you're going to be really, really pleasantly surprised by what we see from Ezekiel. Obviously, guys coming from an Ivy League school, he's going to be a smart, tough football player, and that's the type of football that we're trying to play at the University of Virginia. Matthew Fobbs-White coming from Baylor, what looked like potentially us getting two guys that were either going to or were already at Baylor, but we don't talk about DJ Lagway right now. We're talking about the guys we did get. Fobbs-White has been very solid for Baylor. I think he's going to add a really nice change of pace in the pass rush. And then Devon Baxter, probably one of the more interesting guys we picked up in the portal from Michigan. Did not see the field a ton in Ann Arbor, but came in very highly touted. One thing that Michigan has done very well consistently is play very good defense, and they have very talented, very experienced guys on the defensive line. And so I don't think it's an indictment on Devin that he didn't necessarily see the field, just because there are so many good players on the defensive side of the ball at Michigan. It almost became a meme how they were just kind of winning these Iowa-style football games with great defense and a decent running attack, and they were just trying to figure out the passing game. So I think Baxter is going to be a great change of pace rusher for us. We flip over to the offensive side of the ball. We go to the running back position. The headliner of this class is most definitely Peyton Lewis. Peyton Lewis, a highly touted prospect out of the Commonwealth of Virginia, went over to Tennessee, played behind a 1,000-yard rusher in Knoxville, so his production was very solid in a secondary rushing role there at Tennessee. And so I think, Peyton Lewis being getting a chance to be the main back, if you are a running back in the portal and you saw what Virginia was able to accomplish with Jamari Taylor, Harrison Whaley, Xavier Brown, you can see yourself in that rotation and see the success that all three of those guys had as the three main backs. And so, hey, get ready to learn that direct snap, Peyton. Jaquel Middlebrook. This guy, I think, is going to be a fan favorite. The dude has balled out in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. A Blue Raider from Middle Tennessee State University. This dude has been one of the most solid Group of 5 production backs in the country. Super, super solid. He kind of reminds me of Harrison Whaley in that same way, where he's coming over as a highly productive back out of the Group of 5, coming to the University of Virginia. This is a type of running back that the University of Virginia knows how to use extremely well. Keith Gaither, the running backs coach, Des Kitchings, Tony Elliott, all the way down. They know how to get the most out of running backs like Jaquel. I think this dude is going to do extremely, extremely well at the University of Virginia. Next up, we go to Solomon Beebe. Solomon Beebe comes to the University of Virginia from UAB down in Alabama in the AAC. Solomon is an interesting case. He's been listed as a running back as well as a kick returner, punt returner specialist. Solomon brings a lot of interesting skills to the table. I think he will be used significantly in the running back rotation as kind of a change of pace back, as a bit more of a speed and receiving back. But you can always use more guys on the special teams. I do see Solomon having a decent chance at returning quite a few kicks, quite a few punts, and that is a significant X factor for the University of Virginia. We're playing a fairly tough schedule, a lot of competitive teams, and when you're playing close competitive games, special teams is one of the big difference makers in whether games are won or lost. Now we flip over to linebacker. Coming to us from UTSA over in San Antonio, Nana Anyanwu. I apologize if I am butchering that, but he has been such a solid producer. If you don't keep up with a lot of AAC football or football out in the state of Texas, you do need to spend more time watching what UTSA has built over there in the Alamo Dome. They have been such a solid hub for productive players, and they have won a lot of football games. He comes to us from a winning culture, from a program that expects to win games, and so he's going to be a great addition to that linebacker room, especially with Maddox Marcellus coming back, with Cam Robinson healthy. There's going to be a lot of healthy and really good leadership and expectation to win coming from that linebacker room. I'm so excited to see what we have with Anyanwu. We go over to wide receiver. Rico Flores is another recent commit coming to us from UCLA. Obviously, wide receiver is still a position that I think we're looking to add some guys in. We've got some young guys that are looking to take the next step, along with players like Jamal Edrin, who are coming back. But with Trell Harris now leaving, he's now at Oklahoma, and Eli Wood still kind of in the air. I believe he's committed to Utah State. Rico Flores is going to have a chance to prove himself at the University of Virginia. Obviously, UCLA had a complete roller coaster of a season in their own special way when it came to their head coach being let go very early on in the season, the highs of winning that crazy Penn State game, and ultimately helping to get James Franklin over to Blacksburg. So Rico is going to have a chance to come into a much more stable situation at the University of Virginia, obviously with a highly touted quarterback in Bo Perbula, a very solid quarterback in Eli Holstein, as well as some of the young guys that we have in that quarterback room. So I expect Rico to have a very solid year. We go over to the tight end. Tight end is a position that we are looking to expand. Clearly, from some of the things that I've seen watching film of UVA, I think we really want to be a team that can roll out two tight ends on the field fairly regularly. Dakota Twitty going down against Louisville on that awful turf, you could see how impactful it was on our offense and what we wanted to do. You could see John Rogers coming on later on in the season, but Dakota was really that kind of like important receiving tight end that was a speed threat. And then you had John Rogers and Sage Ennis, who were both very good blocking tight ends. They are great pass catchers in their own right, but they're kind of used in different ways. And so Connor Cox comes to us from Chapel Hill, a very interesting transfer. We got a transfer from UNC as well as Virginia Tech. We'll get to the Virginia Tech transfer later, but Cox brings a very solid ability to run block as well as pass block and go out and catch some passes as well. He's a great Sage Ennis successor in that way. Obviously, Sage declaring for the NFL draft, and so we do now have that ability to have a thunder and lightning tight end combo with how much we want to run the ball, with how much play action and RPO I expect us to run. Having both types of tight ends is going to be really, really important. At cornerback, Jacoby Henderson coming to us from Rutgers. Jacoby was a very solid corner over there in Piscataway/New Brunswick. I'm very excited to see what he can add to our cornerback room. The defensive backfield is a position where we have a lot of experience as well as not so much experience, and quite a few guys who were here for a really long time and are now departing for their next stage and the next level. Obviously, guys like Devin Neal and Antonio Clary. And then we had guys like Corey Costner show some flashes. Donovan Platt had a very, very solid year. And so Jacoby should meld well into that defensive back room. Same with Jalen Jones coming to us from the Sun Belt over at Georgia State. I expect him to be very, very solid in the defensive backfield. You know, Virginia likes to rotate a lot of our defensive backs and make sure that a lot of guys are getting a lot of chances to play, mainly because it keeps our legs fresh with how much up-tempo we face on our schedule. And so I think both of these guys are going to have a chance to make significant contributions. Now we get to our Virginia Tech transfer, Christian Ellis coming to us from Blacksburg. With Brent Pry staying on the staff as the defensive coordinator, it's been kind of an interesting thing to see. You haven't seen the exodus that you've seen in other programs. Obviously, there's been a lot of import from Penn State, with how many recruits that James Franklin had developed good relationships with, as well as guys that were already at Penn State and that are going with him. So I think there was just a need for some roster spaces over in Blacksburg. And so Christian Ellis, we benefit from a very, very solid safety coming over to Virginia. I expect him to slot in very, very nicely in our defensive backfield. Now we go over to one of the most interesting transfers, and I wanted to save kind of the best for last. Alex Payne. Alex Payne is a freshman out of the University of Southern California. A 4-star tackle coming to the University of Virginia, a school that had 5 starter adjacent or actual starting linemen come back. Obviously, we have our 5 coming back. We have the guys that were already here, as well as a guy like Noah Hartsoe that entered the portal and is coming back. Alex, there's no guarantee that he will see the field next year. With Boley and Mills and Thomas coming back, there's a lot of tackle depth already on this roster. And so Alex Payne is a very interesting transfer portal commit to the University of Virginia. Also considering the fact that at time of recording, we do not have an offensive line coach. So the fact that we picked up such a highly touted guy in the transfer portal without an offensive line coach and with so much depth coming back, I think it's just a testament to the way the perception of the University of Virginia has updated to reflect the program that Tony Elliott has built. Obviously, this is a program that touts itself on being able to play tough physical running football, as you saw with Jamari and Harrison and Xavier. Like, this was a very, very run-heavy offense at various points in the year. And so if you're an offensive lineman, this is your chance to show out. You're valued in this program. And a guy like Alex is going to have a chance to, A, compete for a spot, because no starting jobs have been given out yet. Week 1 is months away. So if he comes in and he wrecks shop and he's a starter, great. Also, if he is able to gel in that offensive line room and he is able to learn and he's able to grow and he's able to kind of learn in this system, I think the sky is the limit for a guy like Alex Payne. You know, the University of Virginia has had a long and really proud history of developing great offensive linemen. We just had Eugene Monroe on the show later in the last week. We've got more former UVA offensive linemen hopefully coming on the podcast here soon. We've got a long tradition of developing really good offensive linemen, and I don't necessarily think that that's just going to go away now that Coach Heffernan's gone. I think that's going to stay. The culture has been set. Coach Heffernan did a great job in instilling that, and I think he's going to do a great job over at Stanford. But the fact that we are able to retain all of our guys through that change, and the fact that the room is going to be really led and the culture has been forged by those players, like your Noah Josies, like your Drake Metcalfs, like your Monroe Mills, like your Mikhail Boleys. Like, these are guys that have set and instilled the culture, and we've got young guys that are going to be keeping the level of competition high, and they're going to be impact players when they get on the field. Guys like Ben York, guys like Alex Payne probably. So I am so excited about where this offensive line room stands. This was the one area where I was not expecting us to land any highly touted transfers, because it seemed like, you know, Virginia's running back this great offensive line room. Like, if anyone's going to be transferring, would that scare them off? That playing time would not be immediately promised. And I don't think playing time has been immediately promised to Alex. And I think they'd be foolish to do so because we have so many good guys coming back. So I think this is a super solid move for Alex. I think he's going to have a chance to be in a great building, a great town, a great university, and exist in a football program that values the hell out of good offensive line play. Last and certainly not least, because special teams, special players, coming to us from Durham, New Hampshire, not Durham, North Carolina, Wyatt Rubinoff, long snapper. Long snappers are always kind of a funny thing to evaluate as a transfer, because obviously we have metrics for how good a long snapper does. You know, their times from when they release the ball to when it hits the punter's hands. You know, are they able to be at least a factor of resistance when it comes to punt coverage. I think this is, but at the same time, even though long snappers can be kind of a nebulous thing to evaluate and like it'd be hard to assign an overall rating, every locker room I've been in that has won a lot of football games, the long snapper has always kind of their influence outweighs what you would expect in a locker room. You know, I've been with guys like Don Muehlbach in Detroit or some of our long snappers at the Citadel. They were legit leaders on the team. So expect to see Wyatt Rubinoff in some videos in a prominent role on this team because, you know, they play a very mentally taxing position. They have to be mentally tough because they have to be perfect. You know, if you let up a sack, if you blow a coverage, it sucks. You'll get roasted in film. You might get roasted on social media, but it happens. Them's the breaks. You know, if Wyatt snaps this thing into the field goal netting and gets us a safety, like that's like there's such little margin for error for snappers, and so they have to be mentally tough. They have to be able to take that task on with a certain amount of gusto. And so long snappers are always very interesting personalities. So just keep an eye out for Wyatt. And, you know, we got our portal additions here. And I think it's an extremely good portal class. It's top 15 according to all of the prognosticators of life that exist in college football. You know, when the portal was a little bit more inactive for the University of Virginia, I made the point of, look, blindly keeping up with the Joneses is not what got the University of Virginia to this point. Did not get us to 11 wins. Chandler Morris was trying to find a re-love for the game of football. You know, Jamari Taylor was a no-star guy coming from NC Central. Harrison Whaley was coming from Wyoming. Daniel Rickert came from Tennessee Tech. Mitchell Melton had not seen the field at Ohio State in a significant capacity. And so now that this portal class is starting to coalesce and starting to gel and we're starting to see what it looks like and the ratings are skyrocketing, I still don't let it sway me. It feels nice that people think that the portal class was good, that don't watch a lot of Virginia football, but at the same time, the thing that makes me feel good about where we're at in terms of this portal class is looking at these guys, the roles that they're going to fit within our football program, and the ways that they're going to help us play UVA football. Because transferring from like one type of school, say on the extreme example, a wide receiver at Army is going to have a different impact on the football team than that same wide receiver at USC. That's an extreme example, but those differences do exist at every school between everything. So, you know, I think some of these guys were very cognizant of the fact that I'm going to be a great addition because I do very well what the University of Virginia wants a defensive tackle to do, wants a defensive end to do, wants a tight end to do. And so I'm not going to let the portal rankings dictate how I feel about how we did. It's more so, do I feel like we have a cohesive roster that can execute some of the things that we want to do? And I think we do. I think we have a defense that is going to be able to rush with 4 defensive linemen and get to the quarterback quickly. I think we have guys in the defensive backfield who are going to be able to cover well and going to be able to help out in the run fit. Those are some of the things that made us really good on defense. You know, we have additions and retentions on offense that are going to allow us to do what we did well when it came down to it, which was control the ball, avoid turnovers, and really make sure that we are the more physical team. That's what I think we got done in this portal class. And shoot, we're not done yet. Like the portal, obviously the end date for entering the portal is coming up here, and I expect us to do some more business. You know, there are some guys that still won't commit to a school until a little bit later, you know, because when the portal deadline hits on the 16th, that doesn't mean people have to have a school by then. they can still commit afterwards. And so I think we're going to find more guys. And I think that, say an addition at wide receiver or any of these other positions, great. But let's find smart, tough football players that can play UVA football. That's what we need to do more than anything. Let's not have a portal class that exists just to please On3 and 24/7. Shout out to Jackie. Shout out to all the people at On3. I love you guys, but the On3 rankings don't give you an extra couple points on the board. They might give you a couple extra rankings when it comes to the AP poll or the coaches poll or especially the college football playoff rankings. But at the same time, you can't take that ranking with you on the field. That's not going to block a defender any better. That's not going to help you tackle a running back any better. And so, build the class that makes the most sense for our football team. And I think that's what GM Tyler Jones and Assistant General Manager Justin Spears have done. So it's 9:07 right now. At risk of this being horrendously outdated by the time we get this thing up, we are going to send you off for tonight. We've got some more great content coming to you throughout the week, but wanted to give you this quick portal update on where we stand right now. Man, thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, it's clear that you love UVA football and appreciate what we do here at the 4-3-4 defense. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And if I can just ask that you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Have a great night and go Hoos.